Okay, we're jumping into chapter 17. So we've wrapped up these 7 bowls, which is the last of our series of 7 judgments. And now we're moving into this next section of Revelation. So 17 through the beginning of 19 make up this section that talks about the fall of Babylon. And we know that Babylon has been kind of code or an image for the Roman Empire. We've seen some good evidence for that, and we see really good evidence for that in this section here. So we'll just jump into the section here, and this section really gives context for the next couple chapters. So not too much background really to give right now, other than remember we're critiquing the Roman Empire when we talk about Babylon. Peter does this in the end of First Peter, and it's also really firmly established, I think, in this that reading of Babylon. I think really firmly established in this chapter too. So we can start in verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came to me and said, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters." So real quick, this is the judgment of the great prostitute. So the judgment kind of starts in 17, and we have it in 17, 18, 19, right? We have the judgment of evil going throughout the end of this book. And I just point that out to say that, chapter 20 is when we start to get into really a lot of the views of the millennium, and a lot of kind of views of the end times. And I would just point out the judgment of prostitute and kind of the Roman Empire is already starting in chapter 17. And we're going to see more images that I think are retelling the same judgment. So just like with the trumpets and with the seals, I think they're telling of the same events and the same things in different ways. I think we have some of that here in the end of the book. And that's important just because a lot of people are going to read these last chapters really chronologically. I'm just saying that these are visions, I think, that are describing the same thing. But we're not there yet, but just be ready. All right. So verse 2. So this is the judgment of the great prostitute, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And he carries me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. So remember, a red beast with 7 heads, 10 horns. That's our first beast from chapter 13. So this woman, this great prostitute, is riding on the beast that we said represents Nero or the Roman emperor, or Nero-like emperor and Nero-like leader. So that is who the prostitute is sitting on top of, riding that thing. Verse 4. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, and holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written the name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and the earth's abominations. So why the image of prostitute for the Roman Empire? Something I read recently kind of talked about. Remember, it says that the kings of the earth have committed sexual morality with the prostitute, with the Roman Empire here in the city of Rome. I think we're not the great city of Rome here later. And there was a certain appeal to being in relations with the Roman Empire. Right? There was a certain benefit that you received from being with the Roman Empire, so much so that when you were in that economic kind of relationship with the Roman Empire, you would want to follow their gods, right? Because that they were in charge. So you could be tempted to sacrifice your ways of worship in an effort to take part in the luxury that you kind of read about here. This woman is right? This is a picture of economic success and security that comes with a relationship with the Roman Empire. But the image is of a prostitute, because if you have that relationship with the Roman Empire, then you are cheating on the one true God. You're worshiping idols. You're worshiping, and what we even see here is you're worshiping idols that are, like in verse or chapter 13, that are kind of animated by Satan. That Satan is actually controlling. So the image here of a prostitute is kind of appropriate, because you are you're in relationship, but it's a relationship that you're only doing for kind of your selfish gain, and it's not going to end well. And of course, the people of God in the Old Testament, often the image of sexual morality is like a good image for idolatry, that you're cheating on God. So that kind of makes sense too, as we think about the call to be faithful for the church as they're reading this. So this woman, we have the prostitute, she's on the beast, right, closely aligned with the emperor or that figure we saw. And then you see the wealth kind of associated with her. And it says Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes. And Babylon the Great comes up later. The great city is another term we're going to see for this person, or what this person represents. So verse 6, and I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So that's our image. It is this prostitute. She's on the beast. She's on these many waters. She's drunk with the blood of the saints. So this entity, or whatever this woman is representing, obviously has persecuted the church. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. All right, verse 7. So now we get this interpretation in this next long section here. We get actually a couple of interpretations. First in 7 through 14, then in 15 through 18. And this is nice, because the angel is going to tell us what we're looking at. But the angel said to me, verse 7, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. All right, this part gets weird with the beast. Get ready. The beast that you saw is not and is about, the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. So was, is not, is kind of this parody, this Dollar General version of the one who was and is to come. Just like that's the language we've seen for Christ and for the one seated on the throne, for Yahweh. So this beast we talked about imitates what God does, right? He's kind of resurrected almost in chapter 13. And here it's the one who was and is not and is about to rise. So remember, this figure does in chapter 13. Or we'll leave that for a second. So yes, about to rise from bottomless pit. The dwellers on the earth, this is the middle of verse 8, the dwellers on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world were marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is come. This calls for a mind of wisdom. Okay, this is the weird part. So again, we haven't really learned much here right now, that this beast, just like we saw in chapter 13, the kings of the earth, the people of the earth are marveling at what it's doing. But okay, so this in verse 9 is odd. So let's talk about this. And this is the same kind of intro that the mark of the beast had. This calls for a mind of wisdom. So then it says this: the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. So this is a good one. We know what this means. 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. So the city of Rome is called, you can Google it, the city on 7 hills. So to say that this woman is seated on 7 hills or 7 mountains, depending on your translation, is a pretty clear connection with the city of Rome. And here's the weird part. Verse 10, actually. So these 7 heads, they are also 7 kings, 5 who have fallen, 1 who is, the other who has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain only a little while. Verse 11, and the beast that was not, it is not, and it is, and it is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seven, and it goes to destruction. So it says these seven heads represent also seven kings, 5 past kings it talks about, one who's currently the king, and then one who's going to be here for a little bit, but then is not going to rule. And it says, so these are the kings, 5 past, and this one's the real king, the current king. But it says, then there's also, the beast is the 8th king, who's actually one of these 7. So remember our image in chapter 13, that there's this mortal wound that the beast has, and people are marveling at it. So what I believe this is referring to is that same kind of imagery, that same legend that, in that case, remember I was talking about Nero, how there's a rumor and there was a legend that Nero would come back to life and come and conquer. So I think that's what that's referring to. If it says there are these 7 kings and the 8th is actually the one that's going to come, is actually one of those 7, I think it's talking about, that Nero is one of these past kings. And he's going to come back. So one of these past kings is going to come back. It's kind of what this is getting at. It's a very wordy, crazy way to say it, and there are lots of different interpretations. I think considering chapter 13 and the imagery there, this is a pretty solid interpretation. But whatever kind of the point there is, I think if we focus on the clearer image here is that if the woman is on 7 hills, that's the city of Rome. So, some of these images and these interpretations we got to hold loosely because there are lots of different views, and you can make a case for either of them. But that's kind of where I land with the 7 kings. So the 8th king is one of these past kings. So that's what I think when they were talking about Nero coming back to life. All right, verse 11. As for the beast that was and is not, we already did that. Verse 12. And the 10 horns that you saw are the 10 kings who had not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and those with him are called and are chosen and faithful. So the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings. So this is talking about 10 new kings in verse 12. And this is referring to, right, so the Roman Empire, being an empire, was made up of lots of different territories, just like King Herod in the Bible is the kind of king of like Palestine, his area. But he is ultimately, he reports to Rome. So this is talking about 10 kind of these client kings that receive power from the beast. And it says they're of one mind, they hand over their power and authority to the beast. Or they receive, I guess they don't receive the power to the beast, but they receive power, but they give that power over to the beast. And it says that they'll make war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. So this language of Lord of lords and King of kings is really cool because it's running directly against this beast. Because this beast is a king, and it says that this beast is the king of all these other little kings. But then John points out, no, actually, they're going to war against the Lamb, who is actually the King of kings and the Lord of lords. So this is just like, it's very similar to like the Armageddon language we saw in chapter 16, that all these kings are gathering to make war against the Lamb, and they're coming under the power of the beast, and ultimately really Satan and the dragon, who's kind of in charge of those figures. But they're going to be conquered. It just says, this is the judgment of the great prostitute. and you get one little sentence. Look, they're going to make war, and the Lamb's going to conquer them. So in this case, we don't get a ton of information. It must not be that big of a fight or that big of a problem for the Lamb, because the Lamb conquers. So then we get, so that's kind of our kings, our heads, and our horns, what those are kind of representing. And then we have another set of kind of interpretations here in 15 through 18 to wrap up the chapter. And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw, where the prostitute is seated, are the peoples and multitude, the nations and languages. So the waters being, right, the Roman Empire, right, they're over really the civilized world, all different territories of different nations, peoples, and it says that the beast and the prostitute are over, that they are on top of the waters. So it is a sign of, right, domination. Verse 16, and the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put it in their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So these 10 horns, right, these are the client kings. It says that they and the beast, so they and the emperor, that they'll actually hate the prostitute. So they and the beast. So I think what we're getting at here, if we're talking about, those client kings, we're describing, the same way that, the people of Palestine in Jesus' day were not fans of, like, the Roman Empire. They would rather be in control of their own territory. So it is this begrudging allegiance to Rome, begrudging allegiance to the emperor. So much so this is that they hate, right? That they hate the prostitute. And they will make her desolate and naked, devour her flesh. So a couple people here talk about that. This is kind of focusing on the how evil will ultimately self-destruct, and the powers of evil are self-defeating, and kind of forcing some sort of, like, civil war between the Roman Empire, or the different ways that the Roman Empire might come to an end and might fall apart and meet its doom. This is kind of foreseeing that these client kings are not going to put up with it. They hate being ruled, and they're going to destroy the prostitute, the great city. And it says, for God has put it in their hearts to carry out his purpose. So in this case, this is God's judgment against the great city, which we're in, the great city of Rome. The Roman Empire is to use these client kings to ultimately destroy it. So in verse 18, I've been saying this great city language, and it comes here and then later. But verse 18 says, the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over kings of the earth. So I've been using the city of Rome and Roman Empire kind of interchangeably, because the city of Rome was the power center and the epicenter of the Roman Empire. So they're kind of mixed images at times. But the point here is that God is going to judge. Big point of this last part is God is going to judge the city of Rome, Roman Empire, through putting it in the minds of these client kings that they would overthrow, and that they would not be allegiant to the Roman Empire anymore. So that's kind of the image that John uses to describe the judgment, God's judgment of Babylon and of the prostitute. And in the next section here, we get this, like, funeral So this will be next time, but verse 18, we're going to see about the funeral for Babylon. And it's a long section with a lot of poetry and a lot of songs, and pretty interesting, but it sheds light on the image we just saw. So our big takeaways as a group when we discussed this was that first, that evil is self-defeating, and that God is somehow behind that. So like this image here of the evil empire destroying itself, but actually it's carrying out God's purposes of judgment. And then one of our other big takeaways was that in the same way that the Roman Empire was seen as a prostitute, and that the people of God could cheat on God with the Roman Empire, so we are tempted to give our allegiances to the things of this world, often political, economic powers, and just to reflect on where do my allegiances lie, and hopefully we can say that they align with the Lamb of Christ. So moving right along, and we'll see you next week.